Welcome to the Wanderers History Podcast and to a new episode of what it may become the Ask Chat GPT About History series. Today, I've asked Chat GPT about two very important questions and two very important centuries. I've always pondered which were the most consequential and influential centuries, the 16th or 17th century, albeit there's a very strong bias on my part because those centuries were the most studied by myself in my undergrad and postgraduate days. Before we continue, I'd like to remind you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. It really does help the channel a lot. Let us resume. So when asking ChatGPT about the 16th century, the program had this to say, quote, "The 16th century is an incredibly important period in world history, as it saw major changes and developments in a number of areas, including politics, religion, art, science, and exploration. One of the most significant events of the 16th century was the Protestant Reformation, which began in 1517 with Luther's publication of his 95 Theses. This religious movement had a profound impact on Europe and the world, leading to the fragmentation of the Christian church and the emergence of a new Protestant denominations. The 16th century was also a time of great exploration and discovery, with European explorers traveling to new parts of the world and establishing contacts with cultures and civilizations previously unknown to them. This period saw the first circumnavigation of the globe by Ferdinand Magellan's expedition, as well as the exploration of the Americas by figures such as Christopher Columbus, Hernan Cortés, and Francisco Pizarro. In addition to these global developments, the 16th century saw major changes in European politics, including the consolidation of centralized nation-states and the emergence of absolute monarchies. It was also a time of great artistic and cultural flourishing, with figures such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and William Shakespeare leaving their mark on the world. Overall, the history of the 16th century is of immense importance for understanding the development of the modern world, and its impact can be seen in a wide range of areas today." End of quote. Now, it's interesting because while it does mention the emergence of Protestantism in Europe, it does not mention the fact that it is an incredibly violent and tumultuous century, not just in Europe but other continents, the French Wars of Religion, what happens within the Holy Roman Empire, what happens with the Ottoman expansion in Eastern and Central Europe. Nevertheless, it is a fairly broad and decent answer. So when I asked about how important is the history of the 17th century, the answer was a bit different, and it said, quote, "The 17th century was a pivotal period in world history marked by significant political, social, economic, and cultural developments. One of the most important events of the 17th century was the 30 Years' War, which devastated much of Europe and reshaped the political landscape of the continent. The war marked the end of the Holy Roman Empire as a major political force and paved the way for the emergence of modern nation states. The 17th century was also a time of significant scientific and intellectual progress, with figures such as Galileo Galilei, Isaac Newton, and René Descartes making major contributions to fields such as astronomy, physics, and philosophy. The period saw the emergence of the scientific method and the development of new ideas about the nature of the universe. In addition to these scientific and political developments, the 17th century was also a time of great cultural flourishing, with important literary and artistic works being produced across Europe. The plays of William Shakespeare and the paintings of Rembrandt and Vermeer are just a few examples of the cultural achievements of this period. The 17th century also saw significant developments in trade and commerce, with the growth of international trade networks and the emergence of powerful trading companies such as the Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company. Overall, the history of the 17th century is of immense importance for understanding the development of the modern world, and its impact can be seen in a wide range of areas today." End of quote. Now, if we are to take this answer, and if we were to ask ChatGPT directly which one it considers the more important century, I think it would lean towards the 17th century. And there are some valuable points there with the 30 Years' War, 1648, Westphalia, the beginning of a new era of international relations and the reshaping of borders and, I would say, international law as well. But also at the same time, it makes a crucial point about the emergence of the global empires. By mentioning first the Dutch East India Company and then the British East India Company as well, and the development of these immense structures that would go on for decades, if not centuries, which was the case with the British Empire, and the East India Company played an integral part in the early days, so the 1600s, even before. This, of course, has to do with the international context, the somewhat weakening of the Ottoman Empire, especially in the 17th century, and how these powers tried to take advantage and profit from this. So, all in all, these are, I would say, very general questions. They make some good points and they try to cover everything. So, everything from geopolitics, from military. There's not much socio-economic commentary in these questions, but I suppose you could ask more questions there. But nevertheless, this is proving to be I wouldn't say fascinating, but very interesting experiment to see what these algorithms think about very broad historical concepts like the history of an entire century around the world. But I will continue to ask different questions and then just post them here. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button and comment below which century do you think was more important and consequential and influential, the 16th or 17th century. I'd like to hear and read your answers in the commentary section, depending on the platform. Thank you for listening to this episode again. We will resume the other episodes, finishing off the Traveler Diaries in the Mediterranean series. But until the next time, all the best.